show called Pop, so they drop the knowledge on all the latest stuff. From comics and movies, games and TV.
Deadpool and Wolverine. That's right. Deadpool 3. Marvel is saved, right? All is good. MCU. Yay. Let's talk about this movie a little bit. It's got a lot of segments and things I want to talk about. Not going to do spoilers yet. Give you a warning when that comes up in case you haven't seen this. Lord, good Lord, I hope you haven't been on any social media or on your phone because everything has been spoiled by now. It is kind of what I expected. Light on story, heavy on fun, lots of cameos, fan service, really overblown on like the gay homophobic type jokes and the use of profanity, like just way over the top, and tons of CGI blood. Pretty much what I expected. Lots of fun is the key. If you're in it for that, you're going to have a good time with this movie. If you wanted substance, if you thought the writing, if you thought, something creative or different, blah blah blah, probably not what not what you expected. So let's give you a little bit of the lowdown of the story here. Well, the first part of the story is we have a quick shot of Deadpool desecrating Logan's gravesite, which is a callback to Logan itself, the movie. Then he kind of explains how he got there. And how he got there is he's kind of a loser now. He really isn't superheroing. He has his friends. There's like a birthday thing. He's selling cars. There's a quick little scene in that opening sequence where he's fighting the TVA guys. You're like, well, how did I get here? Okay, let me explain. He kind of goes through this little journey before the TVA kind of reach out. So a lot of the TVA stuff was not teased, but basically, a long story short is we meet Paradox and says, "Hey, Deadpool, I want you. I'm going to use you, pull you out of this because there's been this special guy. I'm sorry, let's use the terminology that they use. The anchor being Logan Wolverine has died. Your universe will be destroyed. That's right, the 10K5, the 10,005 universe, which is the Fox universe, is going to be destroyed in 2,000 years. But I, Paradox, is not a babysitter. No, I'm a mercy killer. I've got this machine, which Deadpool calls a MacGuffin. I'm going to destroy it really fast, but I'm going to use you if you want to come on board. I'm going to put you in the sacred timeline, 616, which probably is one of the biggest plot point issues I'm going to have with this movie, which we'll get to at some point. But you go and you do this for me. And, you can have meaning. You can be part of the Avengers. You can be important. And he's like, all right, cool, man. All right. Tell you what I'm going to do. And he just does his thing and gets his own Wolverine. So he basically goes on this little journey. It began by desecrating the grave, fighting with the TVA because he's gone rogue. And then he has a little montage of going and getting his own versions of Wolverine, which he brings back to the TVA. They mock him again. And they said, no, you brought the loser Wolverine. And therefore, we're going to fight a little bit. And they zap him with those little prongs that we saw in Loki season 1, which, by the way, Deadpool explains to you is Loki season 1 because it's fourth wall breaking. And that knocks them into the void. The void is pretty much what we've seen teased a whole bunch of times. You've seen the Fox logo in the background. You see all the different elements that we've seen in Loki. We understand this is where everybody goes. And now you have this sort of conflict that's arisen that this area is being ruled by Cassandra Nova, who is the twin sister of Professor Xavier, super powerful being. And he's going to have to figure out how to get himself back to the TVA. So you have sort of like this Mad Max Road Warrior type stuff with them in this fight that's going to break out. And it's them trying to figure out how to go and deal with. First, they have their own fight. You see some of the cameos that pop up in the trailers, and then with the Casanova thing here, and it's them coming up and figuring out how to partner and kind of have some sort of meeting. Now, Wolverine wants is he wants to fix his universe. He thinks it's a way to save his universe. Deadpool kind of lies and misleads him that that's even possible. And of course, Deadpool is like, well, I can partner with this guy and get back to my universe and save my universe. That's pretty much his thing, and get there before this time ripper paradox thing actually happens. That's pretty much the gist of the story, riddled full of whatever cameos and action sequences and things like that. So now I'll unpack it a little bit further if you want. Where I am on this, it's mostly a fun movie, not a smart movie, not a deep movie, not a movie that really changes much. Really doesn't even affect most of the MCU as much as I kind of thought it would. I thought it would reset more with the current characters or the current timelines, but that's not even the 616 is the comic book universe. It's not even the MCU, even though that's the clip that was on the TV. So I don't really know what great benefit they get from this movie towards other movies, which isn't really a bad thing. It is kind of nice to have one that just kind of stands on its own. I think this is incredibly rewatchable for the different battle sequences. There's different moments in this film that are going to be very rewatchable. But I think the emotional high of seeing a character in a cameo kind of goes away a little bit on the rewatches. But it wasn't really a bad experience or anything like that. So I'm going to rate this as a very strong 3 to 3.5 movie. I enjoyed it a little bit more than that, but I think it's because of that cameo fan service stuff. I got a lot of the references and things that I've wanted to see kind of my whole life have materialized in some way, shape, or form. So get a lot more into spoilers now. So if you don't want those for some reason, you haven't seen it or know those things, feel free to dip out, come back. Let me know what you guys think. And I'd love to hear from you on that. So there are a ton of cameos, especially with when they're in this void area. You're gonna have these Fox villains show up. You see Toad. You see a quick little interaction with Sabretooth, which was really awesome and rewarding because Wolverine basically just decapitates him like nothing, which was super rewarding and right out of the comic book. The battle between Deadpool and Wolverine in the beginning is also super rewarding and super interesting. And they kind of even say that like this, we'll give you the fight that you've always wanted. I waited my whole life for this. Like all of that meta stuff talking to the fans was what we all want. And it is kind of fun to rewatch. And I think people will enjoy that element. Once they kind of get out of this and they're faced with Cassandra Nova. Oh, this is the Sabretooth moment. And this is them finding meaning later. So once they get into the Cassandra Nova part, the film I think kind of gets a little weird for me. She's made super super powerful, but she's like imagine Professor Xavier, but she has to touch you. But then they have moments where they try to charge at her. Characters try to attack her, and she can just like control them almost like Magneto does. So I don't totally get Cassandra Nova, and I really don't understand why they chose to use Cassandra Nova if she's this powerful. Like she's so leveled up towards like a mega level threat compared to like Deadpool and Wolverine. So I think that's a little bit of a shortcoming because I don't totally believe when we get to the resolution with that. But this is this contrived Mad Max place where they just capture everybody. And we really have one major cameo here, and this is this Chris Evans cameo that comes into play. All right, so one of the big cameos So one of the big cameos early on, of course, is the Johnny Storm reveal. You see Chris Evans being talked about earlier in the film. He's really into his Cap fandom. Deadpool has a great commentary and emotional moment. The Paradox and the TVA love Cap as well. So when Chris Evans is kind of appearing, you think he's going to be, and they lead you right to the water. You kind of knew this was leaking, so you kind of knew what he really was. He's Johnny Storm. So instead of saying like Avengers Assemble, it set up his Flame On, a quick little fire battle. But Pyro is one of the other X-Men that's captured in the void. Pyro, of course, can absorb flame. It just sucks Johnny's energy out of him, and he collapses, which, by the way, sells the Human Torch extremely short. Kind of lame. And Johnny Storm is this nasty, foul-mouthed human being. He's captured in a little ball, and it kind of sets up the gag later on because he's lying about him saying all this trash talking about Cassandra Nova, which that sets up the end credit scene, which is kind of a callback to that to just clarify that Johnny Storm is a foul-mouthed pig. Let's just say he has a rather graphic and sad little pathetic ending that Cassandra Nova just kind of like grabs him and just it's like what on earth. And again, she's super powerful, and it almost is to a fault because she is that powerful. So we have a large portion of the movie that is like typical buddy cop stuff where it's the two of them on this little journey film. They're chit-chatting, whatever. We've seen this sequence where they're in this minivan. It's that shot where you see Deadpool going, pew, pew, you know, pew, 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 doing Spider-Man things. He's like, knock it off. He goes, one more time. And they fight. You see Deadpool getting thrown out of the roof of this minivan. It basically is this really in-your-face commentary about the Honda Odyssey, which I thought was weirdly out of place. I don't know if that's actually paid marketing or not scripted. So this is this little road journey, and it's kind of partnered with, if you will, the heart of the movie is about finding yourself and having purpose, which is where you get all these. So, so the two of them trying to find themselves and having purpose and meaning again. These are where you see these like fire deep emotional cutscenes, things like that. That set everything out. Now, what is really cool about the film is we get these crazy stuff that shows up. It's a constant on and off of the flood that breaks up Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds. So when he goes on the Wolverine hunt, okay, for instance, he's down the TVA rabbit hole. You've got all these great gags. So one of the first ones you get is I think he calls him Harry Lou Retton, a Mary Lou Retton reference, because we get comic accurate Wolverine. So he's like 5'2". He's this little tiny Hugh Jackman. That was kind of funny. Now, Age of Apocalypse, Fire Chaos. Then you see him crucified on the X, which is a classic comic book cover. That was one that just hit me hard because that's super great. There's a quick brown costume John Burns reference of him fighting the Hulk, and you see the reflection in the claws, which is Incredible Hulk 340. That was super cool. And of course, this is the Henry Cavill Wolverine, the Cavalrine. Deadpool's got some great lines. Of course, Henry Cavill looks amazing, and he does like the double elbow, he's lock and loaded kind of thing, which that's super cool as well. And then, of course, he lands on the loser Wolverine, who had gotten himself drunk. Well, right when there's this big X-Men battle, he wasn't there to protect them and be a part of that battle. All the X-Men get killed. He lashes out in like berserker mode. Now the humanity hate everyone, all the mutants, including Wolverine. Blame Wolverine. And that's the Wolverine that he gets and keeps. Then we fast forward to Stuck in the Void, and they're on their little caravan, and then they end up running into basically the rogues on the Void, which are other characters that have been cast off. So we end up with Jennifer Garner's Elektra, which was been rumored and announced a long time ago. The biggest one was Blade. When Blade comes walking through the door, Wesley Snipes' Blade is iconic. Everyone goes bonkers. He has great lines. He's great charisma. Nothing's been gone. Channing Tatum as Gambit was freaking great because you can't understand anything he says, which is kind of funny and played for the gag. I will say the costuming I thought was pretty poor, but I always said that was one of my big negatives on trying to adapt Gambit. It's like I'm not totally sure we can get comic book accurate Gambit because of how weird it would look in live action. Channing Tatum just doesn't look like Gambit, so that was part of the problem. But the best part of the character was he actually has all these jokes because his movie actually was canceled, never actually happened, right? They had it all done and then just didn't do it. So his jokes is like, I was this hero, but I didn't get to do it. Oh, it was really, really, again, inside baseball type stuff. And then, of course, the one that leaked in the trailer was X-23, who has just one of the best lines, and then they edited it from the trailer. So I want to pull that up because it's one of the moments I thought was really, really strange. So this is the moment in the trailer, but in the movie, it's trimmed a little bit.
You were always the wrong guy. Till you weren't.
You were always the wrong guy till you weren't. And then I don't think they did the till you weren't line in the movie. I think they trimmed that part out. And it's like you were always the wrong guy is what stays in there. And I think the till you weren't kind of needs to be there. And maybe I'm just wrong. And I just totally just didn't click right for me. Lura Keane, by the way, because I guess she was in our Acolyte. I don't know anything that's redeeming. Anyone said anything redeeming about the Acolyte, but she was great at X-23, man. And the fact that she's a character that survives all this mess because she can regenerate is freaking great. So the next round of cameos and big appearances is probably some of the worst elements of the movie, in my opinion, because we didn't need to have any of it, and none of it actually ended up mattering. So let me get to that. All right, so then we have the Deadpool Core, right? So we ended up with this. It's been teased in the trailers. They kind of cut around it. You have dog pool, kid pool, lady pool, all this other stuff that happens, and you end up with first of all, I don't even understand, like, why do the Deadpools all fight him? Like, who are we're kind of aren't we told they're not really working for Cassandra Nova? They're not. I don't even understand any of the motivations, and none of it matters. It's all CGI, blood, and nonsense. They literally fight through a bus, and it's just them cutting all these guys up, and then they all regenerate because they're all Deadpools. And there's a nice pool, which is basically the Deadpool that's like Ryan Reynolds. He's a nice guy. He's the one they took the van from. That I thought was exceedingly weak. Kid pool is this most profane of the Deadpools, and they really I guess they had cut pieces of it out of the movie. Head pool, who's like zombie pool, kind of flies around. Cowboy pool. There's just all this stuff. Now in the comics, I have to admit, they throw things out there, and then you have to wait for another series for them to do something again. And I just feel this is the worst part of the Deadpool stuff for me personally. As a comic book fan, none of this is what I wanted because it's so overdone. This is my Harley Quinn and Marvel, right? It's like they have something, fans like it, so let's just keep doing it. Let's keep doing it, and it just never stops. And the joke is so old. I think it was cool that they could have had this sort of like part of his credit scenes to like go back and get the other Deadpools and set up something else. So Deadpool would have some other franchise thing to carry on with. But in this, it was just they have no purpose. They have no point. I don't even know where they all go when they're all done. Like I don't even know. It's just something that just happens. I don't. So, and Blake Lively's in the suit, but I guess we'll take their word on it. The mask stays on. Dogpool is the only one like the joke stays regularly because the dog's called Mary Poppins, but it's Dogpool. The dog doesn't really do anything Deadpool though, which was kind of odd. I think it was some of the worst of the fan service, and I feel like this is going to set me up to one of my biggest issues with this movie is what does the studio learn from this? Because they should make a ton of money. It's a fun movie. It's rewatchable, especially with an audience. But are they going to learn the right lessons? Or are they going to think that doing crazy rated R